Today we're going to do a set of handlebars on a KTM 350. We're going to begin by removing the seat. Step 2, we're going to remove the fuel tank. Unplug the fuel pump, 8mm bolt in the center, the two 8mm bolts in the front to hold the shroud on, in the front here, and then disconnect the fuel pressure line. Step 3, we're going to remove the coolant by taking this bolt out here. Go ahead and relieve the radiator cap to help the coolant come out, and be careful because it shoots out quite a ways. Now that the coolant is drained, go ahead and put the bolt back in and torque it to spec. Step 5, we're going to remove this coolant line right here, set it over on the bench. You're then going to grab the two 90-degree rubber hoses that are supplied in the kit. This is a universal hose designed to fit a few different bikes. So for the 350, we're going to cut it at these dimensions. Measure 3.5 inches over, make a line, and then on the other side you're going to make a line at 1 inch, and we're going to cut there so it ends up looking like this one here. So go ahead and get that cut, and we're going to install it onto the bike. Step 7, take the hoses that you just cut using the factory KTM hose clamps, install them pointing out to the right side of the bike, and it'll look just like this. Step 8, moving over to the other side of the bike, we're going to be removing this hose right here to put the other coupler into, but we're going to make a mark first. The handlebar line is going to follow this channel, and we want it to line up perfectly with where the return coupler is going to go, so we're going to make a mark right here. Then go ahead and take this clamp off and the clamp off the other side of the radiator, put this hose up on your bench, move on to the next step. Step 9, you're going to grab your return coupler, make a mark on each side of the center section of the return coupler, and we're going to cut that section out of the hose. Step 10, now that you have that section cut out of the hose, you're going to grab your return coupler and your two fittings. We're going to put thread sealant on both threads of the Army Navy fitting and the plug, get it tightened into the return coupler, and then we're going to insert it into the hose. Grab our Oetiker clamps, slide them on the hose, and clamp it all together. 11, this is what it'll look like when it's assembled. Pay attention to the little bit of a bend that these hoses have that kicks it out away from the radiator. Oetiker clamps lined up with the plug at the bottom. Little tip is to spray a little bit of brake cleaner inside the rubber hose, and it'll help slide it on. It's a very tight snug. We're going to go ahead and put this back into the bike using the KTM clamps on both sides. 12, now it's back in the bike, clamps are tight. We're going to move over to the thermostat install. 13, you're going to lay out all the pieces for your thermostat. On the 350, the plugs are going to go in the top and the bottom. The large nipples are going to go in both from the one side. We don't have a temp sensor on this one for a trail tech, so we're going to put the plug in the 1/4 inch hole. The valve is going to go in the 1/8 inch hole with the 90-degree attached to it. Remember to use thread sealant on everything, make sure it's tight. Move on to the next step. While assembling the thermostat, I highly recommend holding it in the vise so you can get all the fittings nice and tight. 14, this is how it should look when it's completely assembled. We're now going to grab this and install it onto the hoses that we put on the bike already. So coming over to the bike, this is going to slide in just like this, and we're going to use the Oetiker clamps to clamp it on. This is what it'll look like once it's installed to the hoses. We're now going to move up to the handlebars and start stripping off all the hand controls. 15, we're going to begin by removing the number plate, 8mm bolt, come up to the hand controls, remove the pad, strip off the start and stop button and map switch, grips, the bolts holding the bars down. Go ahead and get everything off and unbolted. 16, you're then going to take the protective sheathing off your raise bar, get it set up on your bike, and put the handlebar clamp on. Now that you've got the bars aligned and clamped down, it's time to put all the hand controls back on. Just go ahead and get your grips and start, stop button, brake lever, put back on the bike. When you're reinstalling your hand controls and your bars, if you're going to be putting hand guards on, such as this bike is, you're going to have to cut the end of the KTM grips off. That way you can slide the throttle tube in far enough and the grip can bolt to the end without it pinching the throttle tube. I recommend this Dremel tool, cuts through stuff really good. You can use a body saw, sawzall, or even a handsaw. If you're installing your hand guards, Unlike conventional expansion nuts that would slide into the end, expand when you tighten it, our bars have a 8mm 125 pitch thread right down the inside of the bar. So just go ahead and grab your bolt it right to the end. 17, now we're gonna grab our lines. We're gonna start out with the straight and straight. We're gonna come over to the bike. It's gonna get routed between the radiator and the frame right through here. And it's going to crisscross up to this bar right here. And we're going to grab the other line with the 45 on it. Same thing, the 45 is going to go down through the radiator on this side. Let's push that through. And it is going to crisscross up to this side. So go ahead and route this just like this. Connect it to the coupler. Go to the other side. Take this line, attach it to the thermostat, and then tighten up the fittings on the bars. Now that you got the lines tightened up, on the thermostat side, you're going to install a zip tie, a good zip tie, holding this line behind here. That's going to keep the thermostat from rubbing on your radiator, keep it nice and supported. Everything's tight up top here, routed through where it's supposed to be. This is what it should look like finished product. So now it's time to move on. We're going to top off the radiator. 18, go ahead and top your coolant off. Remember, we're going to have to heat cycle it to get the air bubbles out after the fact, but go ahead and fill it up now. It's easy access. 19, now we're ready to drop the fuel tank back in place. So set it in place, make sure it sets in and bottoms out. You got an 8mm bolt here, your fuel pump wire, your two 8mm on both shrouds here, and your fuel line. Go ahead and get all that done. 20, go ahead and get your number plate put back on. 21, reinstall your seat. 22, before you start the bike to purge the air out of it, go back to your thermostat and make sure that your temp control valve is in the open position. Go ahead and fire the bike up, bring it up to operating temperature, and top the coolant off in the radiator. Now that the radiator's topped off, everything's completed. Ready to go out and ride.